April is a great time to get back in the garden, revitalizing the lawn, pruning shrubs and trees, and planting your flower or vegetable garden are all sure signs of spring. But with so much to tackle at this time of year, where do you begin? Tonight, our experts will discuss lawn and garden preparation and take your questions. Our toll-free number is 1-800-543-8242. You can also email your question to connect@wpsu.org. If you'd like to join us on Twitter, you can tweet a question to @WPSU. And now let's meet our guest. Tom Butzler is a Penn State Extension horticulture educator. He works with commercial horticulture operations and the landscaping community. His work focuses on vegetable production as well as programs and workshops on beekeeping. Kathy Demchek is a senior extension associate in the Department of Horticulture at Penn State with statewide responsibilities for berry crop extension and research. John Esslinger is a county-based horticulture educator with Penn State Extension. He works with growers in fruit, vegetable, and greenhouse production in northeastern Pennsylvania. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
One day it's in the 70s, the next day we have frost warnings, and Kathy, we're sure to have more frost warnings before it's all over. Which plants need frost protection, and what's the best way to do that? I think this is on the minds of many people right now.
It is. We're getting a lot of questions along those lines these days, Patty. You know, the plants that are in most danger right now are the ones that are either very actively growing, that have very tender foliage that's just coming out. On some of the perennials, they'll do just fine. But basically, things that have very tender blossoms, like on strawberries, fruit trees that are blooming, those sorts of things. Anybody who was tempted to put out some of the warm season vegetable crops like tomatoes or peppers or
I mean, we were all
eggplant,
enticed to do that, weren't we?
And a lot of us did. Do need to be careful and take some measures to protect their plants.
Okay, so what's the best way to protect them?
There's a few things you can do. One is, of course, keep your eye on the forecast. If temperatures are forecast to be, if you have tomato seedlings out, even under 50 degrees for a tiny seedling can be tough on it. Larger plants can take colder temperatures, so down to 32 for a lot of those. But you can do something like throw, a cloth of some sort over the plants the night before. I had brought some samples of these are called floating row covers. They're difficult to find locally, but you can find them in garden centers online. Or some of the places where you might have bought your seeds online. But this is a very lightweight one, and you'll see that they really do float.
So it's not going to crush your plants?
It's not going to crush your plants.
Okay.
And that's the advantage over throwing something like a sheet maybe over your plants that could get wet and then flatten them, or plastic that might heat up during the day.
This is a translucent piece of white cloth. I mean, you can see right through that.
Yes, what it is spun-bonded polypropylene. This material I'm showing you right here, actually all these two in particular are basically a relative of like Tyvek that you might be familiar with, or you can get a weed barrier that's made of a similar material that you might see in a garden center. This is a little heavier weight material, and it is more similar to the grocery bags that that you can reuse. Basically the same material, except that it's a little lighter weight, and so this does float, and that's why they're called floating row covers.
And give us an idea of how expensive something like that might be, because some people may choose the bed sheet.
Yes, they may. Some of the smaller sections that you can get for $10. It depends on the size, of course, up to $20 for this size that you might want to use in a garden.
Okay, and I guess that you could also cut off a gallon milk jug and put it right over a plant.
Yes, and there are water towers that you can put around them as well that are a little more pricey, but yes, definitely a milk jug or something to that effect.
And of course, this change, this early spring, has us all thinking about what to plant and when. And the USDA recently revised the plant hardiness zone maps. Tell us, and both of you, well, I'll begin with you, John, what does this mean from a practical standpoint in terms of what we can put in our garden that perhaps we couldn't back in the 70s or 80s?
Basically, we can grow the same things we've always grown, but our seasons kind of shifted a little bit so that things are coming earlier. I would encourage people to be careful with that, is that, we had some nice weather earlier, so you might have been tempted to get those tomatoes out. Well, it's still too early. You might want to shift it maybe just a little bit earlier, maybe a week or so, and try and get your stuff in and beat the weather that way. Tree fruit, I think it's going to be fine. We are concerned right now about the frosts, and because of the early seasons kind of push the trees so that they're blooming and a little more susceptible to frost right now. But we'll get through it.
Yeah, I think one thing you have to be aware of is the frost-free date in your area.
Used to be Memorial Day.
Well, it used to be Memorial Day, and you know, one year does not mean a trend. So just because it's warm this year doesn't mean we're going to have an early warm-up next year. So typically in central Pennsylvania, you know, that frost-free date is anywhere, depending on elevation, you know, it could be the middle of May. And the further up north you go up to the New York border, they've had frost events well into June. So you need to be aware of your local conditions, and those frost-free dates are available. You can locate those.
It makes me think that our box stores are trying to get us to buy our plants twice because they've been available for weeks. And, you know, we're so tempted when we see that, but I've held off. But a lot of people have not.
That's correct.
That is, but you do have some consumers out there that want early tomatoes, and so they'll do what we call patio tomatoes. They'll pot up those pepper plants or those tomatoes in pots, put them out during the day, and if it gets cold at night or cool at night, they'll bring them into the house, and they'll stay warm, and then they'll put them back out. So I mean, they're kind of manipulating it a little bit, but planting early, taking advantage.
And there are a lot of crops that should be out now. You know, the cold crops, cabbage, lettuces, things like that, spinach.
And they can tolerate frost.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anything above a 25 killing frost, right?
Yeah. I got my onions planted this afternoon, had a little window there and snuck out and got it done. So yeah, there's things that we can be doing now that we should be doing. Tomatoes and peppers in the garden, a little too early.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Speaking of tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, so they're becoming more popular. If you buy them in the grocery store, they can be $4 for one tomato. Yeah. But they seem to be a little trickier to grow, a little more difficult than the common hybrid tomatoes. Can you give us some tips on preventing disease with heirlooms?
Well, that's one of the disadvantages to heirlooms is that, you know, people like them for their taste. They're unique. There's a little bit of history or folklore behind them, and you know, the Mortgage Lifter or Cherokee Purple, things like that. I mean, really interesting names. But as you mentioned or alluded to, they do have some downside to that. You know, some disease issues.
Yeah, and a lot of them are long season varieties, and so the longer the plant's out there, the more likely they're going to have an issue.
In a couple of years, a lot of people in our area had early blight. Explain what it is and why it's one of these diseases that starts and seems to just run through a county. I mean, everyone I talked to had early blight problems. Kathy?
Well, early blight is a fungal disease, so so spores are produced that basically can be wind-blown for very long distances with that disease. And depending on wind speeds, how much wind we're getting, it seems like things are getting windier these days too as well. Spores can be blown a very long distance.
Okay. Thinking early blight or late blight?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, late blight.
Yeah, their early blight is a disease it's in the soil. We typically get it every year. It starts on the lower leaves, be a spot maybe the size of a dime, and then you'll see that it slowly starts to move up the plant, and it takes most of the season to really damage the plant. Where late blight, on the other hand, that's a disease that you know, Kathy was alluding to. It moves through the air, and it's a very
clarifying, yes.
aggressive. It's the most impressive disease you'll ever see. I've seen.
And it's actually the more common, isn't it?
No.
Early
blight. You had mentioned early blight, and that's one. It lives in our soil from year to year. Late blight has trouble or difficulty overwintering in our region. Although as mild of a winter we have, things can be kind of interesting this year.
Yeah.
Things can be very interesting.
Are there some preventative things, Kathy, that we can do to avoid early and late blight?
Well, I can answer with one of the things we can do is make sure wherever you're getting your plants from is a reputable source.
And what would you consider a reputable source?
Oh, you know, probably not places where they've been sitting in a store under damp, humid conditions for a very long time. Places just where you can get them cheap, maybe from a nursery that or a greenhouse where you can talk to the people and ask them what their seed source was, where they might have gotten plants from, or where they just bought in maybe from an area that might already have disease development coming in.
How about mail order?
Yeah, I think I would avoid mail order.
Okay.
Yes. If you guys would care to...
For tomato plants? Probably avoid mail order for tomato plants, but you know, in the woody ornamental trade, whether they're fruit trees or plants for the landscape, I mean, that's a pretty big thriving market there. And
reliable?
I think pretty reliable for the most part, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I wanted to come back, I guess, to the late blight thing, if I could, for just a second, though. Sometimes we were having problems with that fairly early in the season. It isn't always a late season disease like it used to be. So, you know, that's just, you know.
Yeah, in 09, that was the year that it was so bad. That year we brought the disease up on transplants that were grown in the South. And so then we distributed them all through New England, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and you know, the disease just went crazy that year.
And a lot of disappointed tomato growers.
Yeah. At that time, I was working in Lackawanna County, and there was virtually no garden tomatoes left in that county. But it was because we brought that disease in. Typically, it has to move up the coast with the weather. And that year, it got a jump start.
Okay. We go to our first phone call. Rhonda is calling us from State College. Go ahead, please, Rhonda.
Hi. There's been a lot of talk already this year about a drought, and it's only April. So that has me rethinking what flowers to plant this year. I think I'm going to skip the annuals because they need more water, but I don't want to give up the color. Can you suggest some drought-resistant perennials that have a nice, rich color?
Good question.
Well, it's always difficult to know whether you're going to go into a drought or not. You know, weather's just kind of goofy. But you know, I think some things to take into consideration is one. Every gardener probably should do this, whether it's in the garden or in the their landscape, which they're growing for aesthetics, is to mulch. Using mulch, put 2 or 3 inches of some sort of compost or bark or something like that, really does a good job of conserving that moisture. The other thing is that we've been encouraging, and I know at a lot of extension workshops, we've been doing rain barrel workshops. So anytime there is a rainfall event, you are capturing that water. So you don't have to use the well, or if the community has some sort of restriction on water usage, you have a readily supply of water. But there are some annuals out there that do thrive in the heat. I mean, there's some pretty extensive lists out there that you can get off of some of the land-grant university sites. But just off the top of my head, marigolds. Marigolds do very well under hot conditions. Anytime you plant annuals, you are going to have to water. They have to get established.
Impatiens, for example, every day you really need to, especially if they're in a container.
Yes, well, true, right. Whereas perennials, they have been there, they're established, they have extensive root systems. So just the idea of, well, you plant an annual and you can walk away, I mean, that's not true. You do have to water, get it started, let it allow it to develop that root system, and then mulch it. And then, I mean, it does a pretty good job.
Okay, any plants, though, you'd recommend that are considered drought-resistant plants that you might...
Well, like the marigolds, for example. I mean, they thrive in that. Celosia do pretty well, and they're very colorful, and they come in different colors. So, the lists are pretty long out there.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much for your phone call. Charles is calling us from Williamsport. Go ahead, please, Charles.
Yes, I would like to know why the tomato leaves turn yellow. Are they missing something in the soil, or why does that happen?
Yeah, there's several reasons why they could turn yellow. Charles, first, we really encourage you to get a soil test, and that way you know where the fertility is in your garden. Yellow leaves typically could be a nitrogen, maybe a little bit light on the nitrogen. Magnesium sometimes, if it's between the veins and you're seeing some yellowing, that could be a magnesium deficiency, but your soil test will tell you that.
So get that soil test now.
Now's the time to do that, yes.
And you can take it to your extension office for what, $15?
You purchase the kits through your extension office. They're $9.
Okay.
And then you put your soil, you get your sample, put your soil in the kit, and then you mail it to the university, and then they'll probably about 10 days, 2 weeks, they'll be back to you with the results.
Okay, getting the right soil sample, I mean, getting a good sample is important. So you don't want to just scrape off the top. Explain what a good soil sample is.
The kit has all that information in there, but what they want you to do is take about 12 different spots. You want to take a depth of about 7 inches and a uniform amount of soil through that depth. You want to mix it very well, take out the pieces of organic matter and rocks. You're sending a cup of soil that's going to represent tons of soil that's in your garden. So you've got to do a good job there. If you do that, you'll get a good representative sample.
Okay, thank you for your phone call, Charles. Speaking of soils, clay is a big problem for people in central Pennsylvania. What are some tips for amending that? Because tilling clay or cultivating to create a good garden, it's a lot of work.
One word.
Well, organic matter.
Okay.
Yes, compost. Yes, any kind of organic matter will help. But yes, a compost is wonderful. I would say if you're using compost, you may want to have that checked, or at least have some idea where the pH is on that, because that can vary.
And you can just buy a little kit at the garden store, right?
It'll at least get you in the ballpark.
Okay.
I mean, for really serious, reliable results, where you really want recommendations on what you need to do to correct a problem.
And what generally is the problem with compost? That it's too high a pH?
Sometimes it can have a very high pH.
Which can do what to your plants? Why is that an issue?
That can cause some nutrient imbalances once it gets too high, and so you can run into like some micronutrient deficiencies.
I think that was my mistake. I added so much compost last year that nothing did well. The soil looked fantastic, but the plants didn't do well.
Yes, or if you're trying to grow azaleas or rhododendrons, you can really get a pH way too high for them easily.
Okay, and speaking of fertilizers, you know, you can go into a garden store and see fertilizers in a variety of formulas. For example, something labeled 10-10-10, or something that's 5-35-10. And you said earlier, John, you could do a whole class on this, but just give us a little bit of an idea of what we should be looking for and what those numbers actually mean.
Okay, the numbers mean it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
Always in that order.
It's always in that order. That's what those numbers mean. You kind of think of nitrogen as kind of something that's going to encourage a lot of top growth, a lot of lush growth in the plant, which we need early. Phosphorus is more of a structural thing that we need early in the season. Phosphorus is not available in the soil when the soil's cool. And for plants to get that early, a lot of times we like that phosphorus close to the seed or the young transplant. And then potassium is the last number, and that's something that, you know, different crops need different amounts of potassium, but you know, we all like to grow tomatoes, and tomatoes need a lot of potassium.
So which of those two formulas would you be picking for tomatoes, 10-10-10 or 5-35-10-10?
Probably the 10-10-10 would be the best choice, of those.
But it's, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years, but the government is looking at restricting the phosphorus out there.
Because it's making it into the Chesapeake Bay.
Exactly. And so, as John was talking about the soil tests, those are going to become more important because in some situations, you're going to be required to get a soil test in order to get a fertilizer that has some phosphorus. So whether the law is there or not, it makes sense. We do encourage that soil test because if the nutrient's not needed, there's no need to purchase it. You don't want to be applying it in excess either.
Right. There's no benefit to adding more.
Okay. More is not better. All right. Jim from State College, you're on the line.
Hello. My wife has planted sweet autumn clematis front and back in different years, and it flourishes, but absolutely no fragrance. The flowers come out in late August, but no fragrance. Any possible reasons?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first
clematis. His wife has planted it in various places, different years, and it looks great, but it has no fragrance.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is, Jim, did it have a fragrance at first? The first year or two?
No, never. It flourishes. It seems very healthy, but no fragrance.
It's a good possibility that was a clematis that was bred for its showy flower characteristics and not for its floral characteristics. So You know, you see that a lot when in this whole breeding world. You know, they select for one thing and maybe not at the expense of at the other. So I think probably at this point, enjoy the show that you get, and if you really want the smell, probably look at a clematis that has been known or bred for its smell.
Oh, very good. Thank you for your question. We go to Pam, who's calling us from New Paris. Go ahead, please, Pam.
Hi. I have a question about soil acidity and fertilizer. I've been trying to grow blueberries for a long time, and I finally had the soil tested last year in 3 different sections of my garden. One, the blueberry section, and one like a lawn section, and one vegetables. And it came out 7.6, 7.9, and 6.9 where the blueberries would be. And I know they like acid, something a lot more acidic than that. So I ended up, you know, going to the Farm Bureau with my little recommendation sheet from Penn State, where I had sent the samples, and it said ammonium sulfate was what I needed, and the Farm Bureau assured me they did not sell ammonium sulfate, but convinced me that what I needed was urea nitrogen. So now I have 50 pounds of urea nitrogen, and I only needed about 3 cups for the 10 blueberry plants we had. And so I went ahead and used it, and then found out later that what I really needed was elemental sulfate to drop the pH.
Kathy is shaking her hand because she is our resident blueberry expert.
Oh, okay. So anyway, now I have 50 pounds of urea nitrogen. I want to know whether I can spread it on my pastures and on my lawn, I don't really want to do it with the garden because I really try and stay more organic than I can. Or, you know, I try to stay more organic, and I don't know what this urea nitrogen is, but I have a feeling it's more chemical than organic. So anyway, my question is, what can I do with the urea nitrogen, and is there anything else I should be putting on my blueberries? Because the elemental sulfur isn't really a fertilizer, is it? It drops the pH, but it doesn't really fertilize, from what I gather.
Yes, well, sulfur is a plant nutrient, though, too. So in situations where you might be low in sulfur, it would actually be considered a fertilizer. But for your situation, I'll try to answer, you know, hit all the questions. If I've forgotten anything, Patty, let me know. But your choice is yes, for dropping the soil pH, R2. You can use elemental sulfur, as you had mentioned. And you can also use iron sulfate. Okay, either of those will help drop the pH. Basically, the iron sulfate will work more quickly, and it will also be something that you can apply at any time of the year. The sulfur actually needs to be broken down by soil microbes before it can start to have an effect, but it is very effective in dropping the pH. You just need a little more lead time, and it doesn't work so well when the soil temperatures are cool. So if you apply it in the fall, it may be some time till you really see that effect. What we would like you to do would be make numerous small applications over time of sulfur or iron sulfate, whichever you use, to try to drop the pH gradually and not burn roots on whatever happens to be growing there, and not be too hard on your soil microbes or earthworms or whatever you might have living in your soil there that you want to keep. Now, as far as what you can do with your urea, that can be used on a wide range of crops. It could be used on your lawn. I don't know whether you wouldn't want to try to run it through your regular lawn spreader, though, because it'll probably do some damage there. But it could be broadcast. It could be spread if you have a field. You know, anything along those lines.
Okay. Anything to add?
Well, when Kathy was alluding to the damage, urea is very high in nitrogen. What is it, 45%?
44 to 46%.
Yeah. So, you know, that's much different than when you get a bag of fertilizer for your lawn that is 10-10-10. It's 10% nitrogen, where urea is, you know, several times higher.
Yes.
So you have to put it out at
you have to be very careful. You
like
don't want to just go
So just be aware of that.
Anywhere,
Otherwise, you'll get the damage that Kathy was talking about.
All right.
Yeah.
Excuse me, if you are just joining us, I'm Patty Satalia, and this is Conversations Live. Get your garden on WPSU TV and WPSU FM. Let me reintroduce our guest. Tom Butzler is a Penn State Extension horticulture educator in Clinton County. Kathy Demchek is a senior extension associate in Penn State's College of Agricultural Sciences. And John Esslinger is Penn State Extension horticulture educator in northeastern Pennsylvania. Our telephone number is 1-800-543-8242, and our panelists are ready to take your phone call. In fact, we have Tom from Plumboro on the line. Tom, what's your question?
Yeah, I have some used peanut shells that I saved over the winter, and I'd like to fertilize my vegetable garden with it. Would that be okay?
Peanut shells.
Peanut shells. Peanut shells tend not to degrade very quickly, and so you're likely to have peanut shells there for a very long period of time. I wouldn't really count on that.
In terms of nutrients, if you ground them, are they worth anything?
I can't really say for sure. I would
think of it more as like a soil conditioner or you know, a long-term soil health kind of thing. The first thing I thought of was salt. I mean, if these were salted shells, then you could actually damage your plants with the salt that's on them.
I have to say, I put pistachios in my compost pile, shells.
Oh.
Yeah, so that would be one way to get rid of them. And you don't seem to know whether they're worth much nutritionally for the soil.
But like Kathy said, it'll be a long time. It's a very slow process.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your phone call, Tom. Someone emailed us earlier. They write, I have 2 7-year-old cherry trees in my yard that fruit abundantly each year, but when the cherries ripen, many contain small white maggots. Do you know what's going on here?
Yes. If last year was the first year that this person had seen these maggots, well, it could have been a new invasive vinegar fly, it's called. People will refer to them as fruit flies, possibly. But I do want to point out last year was also a very bad fruit fly year in general. So if the cherries were overripe, if there were a lot that were damaged in some way or cracked, you could have any type of fruit fly move in. This new one that I had mentioned is called spotted-winged Drosophila. It is a fruit fly that is capable of basically sawing into sound fruit and laying eggs in the fruit, and then you can end up with little maggots in the fruit right as you're getting ready to harvest it. And so the question is really, if last year was the first time they were seeing them, it could have been that new invasive insect. Prior to that, they may have been just normal fruit flies.
And anything for this person to do to control this?
That can be really difficult. Keeping anything really cleaned up to try to keep up with harvesting can help, because then
maybe picking early?
Picking as early as possible can help. You know, this is one where you almost need to use some sprays. You can't really trap them out. You can't really exclude them. But things like pyganic or pyrethrins type material will work. But
this is a spray?
Okay. It's a spray, but they will come back so quickly that they may need to reapply. And then you get into issues of worrying about those insects actually developing resistance to whatever you're using. But you know, that's kind of what the choice is, to use some general broad spectrum type materials to try to.
Okay, and I want to talk about that in a minute. I'm going to take this phone call. But I think people are more and more concerned about what they use, in part because we're concerned about bees, and you're the expert in bees. We'll be back to talk about that. First, we go to Janet, who is calling us from Johnstown. Go ahead, please, Janet.
I have a grape arbor planted in the back of my house over a patio, and it begins to grow. It's grape arbor, so they're Concord grapes. It grows well. The leaves come out. It gets nice and green, nice and full. But halfway through the growing season, the grapes they seem to get like a blight or something. Half of them gets black. It's like a circle. Completely half of the grape gets black. And then I lose it. I lose the rest of the crop.
Okay. Kathy is shaking her head like she knows what that is, too.
Well, if you get that black circle, and then I guess my question is, do the grapes then also end up looking like raisins by the end of the season?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Yes, that's black rot, which is very common on Concords, on a lot of different grapes. Things you can do: a good thorough job of pruning, removing any leaves from the area. You're pruning clippings far away, actually, from where the grapes themselves are, not just running the mower over them. Anything that will increase air circulation, so keeping the area weeded. Basically, you can try to pick a sunny location. This is one disease that does not like dry conditions, so basically anything that'll keep that foliage as dry as possible will help.
You mentioned pruning. When should she prune?
Yes, pruning would normally be done in March. February this year, yes. So if you hadn't pruned yet, that could be, you could be a little late, but that's something you can definitely keep in mind for next year. And then if you are inclined to use any fungicides, looking for the material called Immunox is one that is actually fairly effective on that. But you need to initiate those sprays early on before infection takes place. Trying to catch up later just won't work very well.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your phone call, Janet. Gina from Pine Grove Mills, what's your question, please?
Hi, I have several apple, pear, and Asian pear trees, and I was wondering if you had any advice for where I could purchase some sprays that are effective for preventing fungus and pests, and also if you have any tips or recommended sources for how and when I could apply those.
John?
Okay. There are some products now for homeowners that are organic or very close to organic. One is sulfur, and it's actually the same sulfur that we talked about earlier with lowering the pH in the soil. The sulfur is very good on several diseases, scab, powdery mildew, and another product that works well is Surround. Surround is actually a clay product that you are spraying the trees, kind of turns the trees white, and the insects then see that white and they don't recognize it as a tree that they would want to attack or the fruit that they would want to attack. So the sulfur and Surround, then you can mix them together. They make a nice combination. The other thing you need to do is just really watch your trees. If you're starting to see some other insects, there are some products like Spinosad. Spinosad is a biological insecticide, very safe, that works on a lot of different pests that is labeled for tree fruit.
Well, it sounds like what she's doing here is preemptive. I didn't get the sense that she already has a problem. Is it safe to say that if she doesn't do these things, she'll get a problem, or?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay, all right.
And that's the way it works with tree fruit is you've got to put those products on ahead of time before the pest or the disease shows up. They only work as a preventative. They are not a cure.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, watch them, and right now or just in the next couple of weeks is the most critical time. What we call it petal fall is probably the most critical spray. There are some other products that you can use.
Petal fall is the name of the product?
Okay, no,
no, okay, that's what happens to the plant. Okay.
Yeah. Petal fall is when just about all the petals have fallen off the flowers. Okay. And not everyone, but most of them have fallen off. And that you need to start then, and it's most important for those early sprays. So, and what we recommend is maybe once a week for about the first month, and then after that you can start to spread it out a little bit. The other way to go is there are some fruit tree sprays that have a combination of products, both insecticides and fungicides, but you've got to be more careful with them because they are chemical type products that you've really got to be careful with.
Okay, we have 3 people in the queue and an email, but I do want to ask about bees. Tom, we're talking about sprays and insecticides, and of course there is some talk that there's a link between these and the decimation of honeybees a while back. So what's your advice here?
Penn State's doing a lot of research right now on some of the exposure to that honeybees and other pollinators are experienced when they go out and pollinate things and so forth. And that's starting to come out, and it's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. But I guess, as a gardener, some things that you can do is one, select some varieties of vegetables that are resistant to some of the diseases and insects. So, for example, pumpkins. You know, we do have pumpkins that are susceptible to powdery mildew, and we have pumpkin varieties that are resistant. I mean, they still get it, but not as easily. And so if you have that susceptible one, then you're going to have to be applying fungicides on a regular basis. If you purchase or plant something that is resistant to the disease, then you can back off on some of the products, or maybe even eliminate the use of pesticides. The other thing you can do, you know, as a homeowner, is to provide a habitat that is conducive to insects coming into, and we do have a lot of predators out there. So you plant a wide variety of flowers. We have these parasitic flies that will come in and they'll feed. They're looking for nectar, but then they'll also find some insects that they like to feed on, and they'll go and parasitize those and eliminate or control or manage. So the most common example is ladybugs. I mean, ladybugs are aggressive feeders on aphids, and aphids are on ornamental plants and on garden plants. And so, you know, they can do a pretty good job of handling that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. We've got Sarah on the line from Boalsburg. Go ahead, please, Sarah. Sarah, are you there? We'll go to Myra from Bedford.
About mulch. I've used mushroom mulch. I've used bark mulch, but my favorite was cocoa shell mulch. Now, is there a negative to it that I can't find it? It was maybe 20, 30 years ago I used it, and I liked it.
It's moldy. I liked it too.
Is there a downfall to it, and where can I find it?
Biggest downfall, you might want to go eat some chocolate. Maybe,
right. Well, it gets moldy too, though.
It might get a little moldy, but
it smells great.
There was no particular downfall that I could think of associated with it. I'm wondering whether it has more to do with chocolate manufacturing in the state and how much of that is taking place right
elsewhere.
now.
You mean to get the product?
Because it's basically a byproduct of that. It was a very popular product as well.
And it was expensive too, much more expensive than the other mulches.
So I think it's just a matter of short supply, not really anything that was wrong with that product that it left the market. Might want to take a drive down towards Hershey and see whether you can look at some down there. I don't know. Let's get chocolate.
Okay, and here's an email question. This person has a hemlock problem. My husband and I recently purchased a beautiful property. I'm concerned and have been told to be concerned about a bug on our hemlock. There are white cotton-looking tufts on the leaves and now little bugs flying around. I think they have affected the rhododendrons, and their buds are very little and leaves have holes in them. Help is the end of that email.
I think there's two different things going on there.
Okay.
I don't know about the holes in the leaves, but we do have an insect that is really doing a good job on our native hemlock stands, the hemlock woolly adelgid. And that email described it very succinctly in that the little cotton puffs at the base of the needle as it goes into the stem. In the kind of our native stands, very difficult to manage. In the landscape, it's much easier to manage. There are some products that you can use, some of them relatively safe, such as the horticultural oils. You would do that during the dormant season, or you can use a light horticultural oil and do that in the growing season. But there are some systemic insecticides that you apply at the base of the tree, that are around the roots, or you can inject into the trunk. It's taken up through the plant. Insecticide is distributed to all the plant parts, and as that adelgid feeds upon it, and it dies off. So very easy. It's pretty easy to manage in a landscape, but in our native stands, we're running into a problem.
Okay. Anything else to answer her question? No.
No.
Okay. All right. We go to George, who's calling us from Windber. Go ahead, please, George.
Yes, I'm calling. I've been planting tomatoes now for I don't know how many years now, but the last couple of years I've gotten that blight, and I was just wondering if there's something that I could put into the ground that would help. You know, I mean, instead of just spraying the tomato plants, is there something I can do with the ground to help, you know, get rid of the blight?
Yeah.
John?
No. Unfortunately, there's not a magical cure to put a fertilizer or a fungicide on to stop it. Basically, when we talk about early blight, it's when we have the weather conditions, damp, cool weather, that favor that disease. A fungicide will help to prevent it, but again, the fungicide's got to be on before the disease attacks it.
Would rotating help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Early blight is in the, Tom made reference, it's in the soil, and so that's one of the places it comes from, and so by rotating it'll help a lot. Late blight, no. I mean, when it blows in on all the plants. Yeah. But there are not many, but there are a few late blight resistant varieties now being available. They tend to be smaller fruited varieties, and maybe they're not exactly what you're looking for other ways, but they are very resistant to the late blight.
Will they be labeled blight resistant?
In the catalogs, yeah.
Yeah, when you order the seed,
Okay.
they make a big deal about it because it's a great selling point.
Yep.
How many local nurseries, greenhouses have them, that's hard to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We go to Kathy, who's calling us from Smethport. Go ahead, please, Kathy.
Yes, I'm a container gardener, and I've just bought a professional product. It's a Root Blast, and it's a 2:1:2 ratio. My plants are rather mature, and then I'm also planting some perennials that aren't mature yet. I just want to know what to expect. Am I going to have to start out in a small pot and then suddenly get to a big pot? I mean, I don't know if I'm growing, Jack and the Beanstalk here. What to expect from a Root Blast with
Blast.
a 2:1:2?
I'm not.
She's growing vegetables. Is that what you're doing, Kathy?
No, I'm growing flowers.
Flowers. Okay.
With a Root Blast.
But
Yeah, it's a
I'm not
2:1:2 fertilizer. I'm not familiar with that exact
but
product.
it's sounding like an organic-based fertilizer with that particular formulation is what I'm guessing. And if that is what it is, my guess is that the release of the nutrients shouldn't be ridiculously fast, and it sounds fairly well balanced. So
she should be okay.
I think she should be okay. Yes.
Okay.
I do know that with some. Let me ask one question: Is this is a granular type material, or is this a foliar type spray with the name Root Blast? I would think.
Are you still on the line, Kathy?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So what was your question?
On the package, is that something you just mix into the soil? Or is it, how do you use it?
It's an organic product.
Okay. So that would probably be something that you would just be mixing into the soil. There are some foliar materials that actually have some growth regulator type properties in them, and with the name Root something in them, and so that's what I wanted to check on that. And those may encourage your plants to grow a little more quickly sometimes.
So no precautions?
But no precautions.
Okay. All right.
No.
Thank you so much for your phone call. We go to Sarah, who's calling us from Boalsburg. Go ahead, please, Sarah.
Hi. I have quite a few heritage roses that with pruning they're about 4 or 5 feet tall. I have 2 that have brown on the edges of many of the leaves. And I was wondering what I should do about that.
Okay, so you have 4 heritage roses, and 2 of them are showing some sort of symptoms on the leaf, and 2 others are not. Is that correct,
I think I
Sarah?
have 6 or 8 heritage roses, and only 2 of them have this problem.
And they're all the same?
They're all different varieties and different colors. But mostly, I think these 2 that have it are pink.
And is this something that's showing up consistently year after year, or is this just a new problem?
This is new.
Okay, and is there anything different about the location of those 2 relative to the others?
No, as a matter of fact, one's right up, another healthy one is right against it.
Okay.
And these have been here for, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years.
I do know we're seeing some winter injury on some of the roses right now that have leafed out very early. I'm wondering if that might be an issue, but are there...
Well, that's a good line of thinking. But if they're all heritage, are they all kind of doing the same thing at the same time, leafing out at the same time, or are they somewhat staggered, different depending on the cultivar?
They're leafing out at the same time, but these 2 have leaves that are brown, getting brown. They're not totally brown, but the edges and the tips.
On all of them, on
Just the
all
2.
the leaves, all the leaves on that one plant.
Most of the leaves on 2 of them.
I wonder if this almost sounds like some sort of a nutrient.
Well, nutrient issue or possibly a salt.
Or salt, yep, a burn on the roots.
Is it possible that those plants are closer to a sidewalk or some place where you put some salt over the winter?
Well, the one is definitely uphill from the sidewalk, and the other, I doubt it though. We didn't have much snow to even put anything out on this year.
Sure.
You know,
you've stumped.
Yeah,
stumped
you know,
our panel.
that is something that. What county are you located in?
Boalsburg.
Center County. Yeah. You might want to swing by the extension office in Center County. We do have a master gardener, a group of people there that diagnose plant issues. They have a microscope and so forth. So that might be a good place to start. I mean, just some of the information that we received. I'm
take
not
a cutting.
Yeah, take a cutting, bring it by the master gardener office, and we'll take a stab at diagnosing it there.
Okay. We go to Dick, who's calling us from Johnstown. Dick, you're on the air.
Thank you. I have a large stand of white pines, 30, 35 feet tall, and as you know, they lose many of their needles in the late fall, and then they get their regrowth. Since there's so many needles under the tree, I was wondering if they could be used as mulch for a vegetable garden, because it's a great quantity that could be used if it would not affect the pH of the soil. That would be my question, and I would appreciate your comments on that.
And it will affect pH, won't
it? It's going to take a long time for that to change the pH of the soil. I don't think it's going to...
Because it's acid.
Eventually it would change the soil profile. But typically in Pennsylvania soils, if they're left unattended, they'll go acidic anyways, just the rainfall and decaying of organic matter and so forth. So this might change it a little faster, but it's not going to be a quick change.
But they might want to put it around his blueberry bushes because they would really like that.
If you could find the lady with the pH 7.2 soil, they might want to make a trade or something. But yes.
Okay, so it sounds like go ahead and use it.
Dick, you've got to consider too that it's very high in carbon. And so when you add a lot of something that's high in carbon, it does tend to tie up nitrogen in the soil. And so if you're going to use it, I'd either add additional nitrogen or just use very small amounts.
Or pile them somewhere where he can let them decompose for some time.
Yeah,
and then
mix them with some grass or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your call. Dick, we now go to Mary Beth, who's calling from Altoona. Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Hi. I have a beautiful lilac bush that it did well. It did well every year, but this year I'm having trouble with blooms. I have hardly any blooms.
That's common, isn't it?
Mary Beth, has it bloomed for you every year except this year, or is
Well, I pruned it back. I was told 2 weeks prior to blooming that you prune it, and it does well, but this year it's very bad.
Okay, pruning your lilac 2 weeks before they bloom?
I should say after.
Oh, after. That's correct. Yep.
Right.
I mean, that is one thing that people run into is that when you're pruning your shrubs, depending on when they flower, it tells you what time to prune. So your lilacs, you would prune after flowering. So, yep, good job on that. But why they're not blooming this year and they've bloomed in previous years, I mean, that sounds like an environmental condition there. I guess one other quick question is, did you apply any nitrogen last year?
No.
Okay.
Should she?
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes when you over-apply nitrogen, whether it's an ornamental crop or a fruit crop, it promotes vegetative growth and not reproductive growth, meaning your flowers and eventually some of your fruit. So sometimes we run into that issue.
I have noticed, though, some areas where some of the lilacs are not blooming, and I don't know whether there could have been any injury to the young buds as they were coming out to the floral parts and some of these fluctuating temperatures we have. Not really sure, but I've noticed that in other places, which makes me think why they're related.
My lilacs are the lightest blooming. I've been there for over 20 years, and they're the least this year that they've ever been.
So it might be an environmental response then.
Yeah. Okay, all right, thank you. We go to Diane, who's calling from New Germany. Go ahead, please.
Hi. We had 10 inches of snow here the other day, and my red bud was in bloom. It partially broke off one of the main branches. I wanted to know if there's anything I can do to kind of tie it up or fix it or somehow repair it, or should I just cut that limb off?
Yeah, typically when we get these wet, heavy snows late spring, when they're starting to leaf out or there's something to catch that snow, it does weigh upon the branches, and you get a lot of branch breakage. When you say it's one of the main branches, there's not really anything you can do other than remove it, cut it off. And hopefully that wound that was created, it's able to heal itself. You just want to be careful when you are pruning that you don't prune to the branch collar where that branch is coming in to the main trunk. Don't prune into that branch collar, otherwise it will be unable to heal and you'll just get some disease problems and rot, and the tree will be in decline.
All right, thank you. We go to Wayne, who's calling us from Rich Valley. Go ahead, please, Rich.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Say, I had a nice little vegetable garden down here the past couple of years, and I tried growing some Brussels sprouts for the first time. And I had these huge, giant stalks, but I never had any made the Brussels sprouts on it. I mean, all year long, and I was wondering if there was some tip or trick for growing good Brussels sprouts like that.
Does anybody know Brussels sprouts?
John, I grew them last year in my garden. They did fine, but I don't have a lot of experience with them. Maybe it was the luck of the draw.
You concerned me when you said they grew big and lush. I mean, you might have overdone the nitrogen a little bit. The other thing is timing. Did you get them in early enough for them to develop? A lot of my better growers will strip the lower leaves, which helps to promote the more of the floret, or I'm not sure what it's called, but the Brussels sprouts to actually form.
Mm-hmm. And I know commercially sometimes they'll continue to break leaves off going up the stem to get that nice long stem of Brussels sprouts on the plant. So it might be a cultural thing.
The other thing, that everything in that family likes a little bit of boron. And so maybe try just a very small amount of like a borax that you would buy at the grocery store for your laundry. Has a little bit of boron in it, but be real careful, just a very, very small amount.
Okay. We're talking teaspoons.
Basically.
In the whole garden, yeah.
Okay. Oh, we go to Mac, who's calling us from Port Matilda. Go ahead, please, Mac.
Yes, a question on the peach trees. We had a peach tree that's been doing very well up till last year, and we got something that a friend said was a brown peach disease. We got rid of all the fruit and cut the limbs back. But is there anything or any hope for it for this year? Anything we could do?
Yeah, that's brown rot, and brown rot is an annual disease that it depends on what the weather is, primarily from the middle of the summer until the fruit ripens. Sulfur, which is a very safe fungicide, is very good on brown rot, and you need to put it on again. It's a preventative. So probably from the time you have quarter size or so fruit, maybe once a week or every week and a half, put some sulfur on, and that'll do a good job of controlling brown rot.
All right, thank you for your phone call. We go to Nancy. You're on the air from Huntington. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Last year I had 2 milkweed plants in my garden, and the previous years I had no trouble with beetles, but last year both bushes were inundated with long-horned milkweed beetles. Am I going to have to give up on those plants because they kept away the monarch butterflies? Or is there something I can do to prevent the beetles from being there?
Yeah, you're out there in a natural environment, and you've got things just flying around. They see it as a food source. They're coming in. There's not really anything that you can do other than maybe use some of that remake cover that Kathy showed earlier to try to prevent or try to create a barrier between the environment and your milkweed plants. So.
And is there a predator she could introduce to the garden?
I mean, there are predators you can introduce into the garden, but for that specific one, I'm not aware of one.
Okay. All right, we go to Linda, who's calling us from Altoona. Go ahead, please, Linda.
Good evening. I was calling in reference to my compost container. I've had it going for about 3 years or so. I've only put organic matter in it, like dried grass and shredded leaves and vegetable matter from the kitchen table and no seeds. And I've never used anything out of this compost pile. I was just wondering if it still has its benefits. Is the pH higher, lower? What caution I should use if I do decide to use it?
Well, some of your nitrogen may have leached out. That might be an issue. However, the phosphorus is likely still there. Potassium is likely still there. You'll still have all the other benefits of the organic matter in improving soil moisture. And so I would say go ahead and use it. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah,
if you got compost.
You took all that time making it, use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that phone call. And I don't think we have time to take other phone calls because I want to ask real quickly, kind of wrap things up with the three of you with expertise in different areas. If you could get home gardeners to adopt one best practice this season, what would it be, John?
Okay. I'd really encourage people to get a soil test. If it's been several years since you've gotten one, get one, find out where you're at. To guess, it's a mistake because you have no idea what you really should be putting on your garden. They're fairly inexpensive. They'll get you the results back quickly. Get a soil test.
Okay. And Tom?
I think in the landscape, I'd like to see folks getting away from this idea of building these mulch volcanoes around their tree. I mean, it's nice to have mulch. It conserves moisture, prevents weeds from being a problem, but 2 to 3 inches. But we're seeing more and more homeowners build these volcanoes up along the trunk of the tree, and that's not healthy.
Kathy?
Well, I would say think about getting a trickle irrigation kit or some soaker hoses, something along those lines, because if we have another dry year, like we did in midsummer last year, that would make very efficient use of water.
Okay, good tips. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight. Tom Butzler is a Penn State Extension horticulture educator in Clinton County. Kathy Demchek is a senior extension associate in Penn State's College of Agricultural Sciences. And John Esslinger is a Penn State Extension horticulture educator in northeastern Pennsylvania. I also want to remind you to take a look at our website, wpsu.org/conversationslive, for links to our 3-minute gardener videos as well as resources on tonight's topic. I hope you'll join us next month as we continue our discussion on gardening and take more questions. The date is Thursday, May 17th. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. I'm Patty Satalia. For all of us here at WPSU, have a good night.